Joe Mason wiped sweat from his forehead as he fixed the old truck's engine. The small garage in New Horizon, Wyoming was hot, even with all the doors open. Summer heat made the tools stick to his hands. Joe had been fixing engines since he was 12 years old. Now at 35, he owned Mason's Auto Repair, the only mechanic shop for 20 miles. "Joe, I'm heading out for lunch. Want anything?" Abby Franklin, his only employee, stood by the door. She was 23 and knew more about cars than most men twice her age. "Just a sandwich, thanks," Joe said, not looking up from the engine. He was trying to fix Mrs. Wilson's truck before tomorrow. The farming season was starting, and she needed it working. Abby nodded and left. Joe continued working alone in the quiet garage. Only the sound of metal tools clicking and the old radio playing country music filled the air. This was his life, fixing what others couldn't, making broken things work again. It wasn't exciting, but it was honest work. The first strange thing Joe noticed was the radio. It started making weird noises, crackling and hissing. Then the lights flickered. Joe looked up, thinking it might be a power surge. That's when he heard it, a deep rumbling sound, like thunder but different. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. The tools on his workbench started to shake. "What the hell?" Joe muttered. Stepping away from the truck, the rumbling grew louder. The concrete floor vibrated under his feet. Something big was happening. Joe walked to the garage door and looked outside. The sky above his shop had changed. The clear blue was now split by what looked like a crack, a long line of swirling purple and blue light. Joe stood frozen, unable to believe what he was seeing. The crack widened. Something was coming through it. A large shape emerged from the light, moving fast toward the ground, toward his garage. Joe ran back inside just as a blinding flash lit up the whole area. The building shook like during an earthquake. Tools fell from walls. The crash was deafening. When Joe looked outside again, his parking lot was destroyed. A smoking object sat in a small crater where the asphalt used to be. It looked like a ship, but unlike any aircraft Joe had ever seen. The surface was smooth and shiny, with colors that shifted like oil on water. Steam hissed from cracks in its hull. Joe should have run. He should have called someone, the police, the army, anyone. But something kept him there, staring at the crashed ship, wrench still in his hand. A section of the ship's side slid open. Joe held his breath. What came out made him question his sanity. It looked like a dragon, a real dragon from fairy tales, but clearly alien. Its body was long and snake-like, covered in scales that shimmered with colors Joe couldn't even name. Instead of breathing fire, it seemed to glow from within, light pulsing beneath its skin. It was huge, at least 15 feet long. The creature moved with obvious pain. As it fully emerged from the ship, Joe saw it was carrying something. Cradled in its front claws was a smaller version of itself, a baby dragon, not moving much. The large dragon's eyes found Joe. They were like gemstones, multifaceted and glowing from within. Joe felt those eyes looking straight through him, reading everything about him in seconds. A device around the dragon's neck lit up. Then, impossibly, it spoke. "You fix broken things." The voice was deep and rumbling, with an odd musical quality. "I need your help, human." Joe blinked, trying to process what was happening. I fix cars, engines, not whatever you are." The large dragon moved closer. Joe noticed now how the smaller one in its arms was breathing in short, weak gasps. There were metal parts visible under its scales, like it was part machine. "I am Carvessa of the Zelthraxian Conclave. This is my hatchling, Rilzith. His heart core is failing." The dragon's voice contained unmistakable pain, the universal sound of a parent, watching their child die. We have traveled through 6 star systems seeking help. Our healers have failed. Our technology has failed. Why me? Joe asked, still not moving. Why Earth? We don't have your technology. We don't even know aliens exist. Existed. Carvisa's eyes narrowed. We have been watching your species. Your transmissions spread across space. We have seen how humans solve problems that should be impossible. You, specifically, were mentioned in local communications as one who can fix anything. Joe almost laughed. That was just small-town talk. Pete at the diner liked to tell stories about how Joe had fixed his tractor when the dealer said it was hopeless. My people evolved alongside crystalline entities, Carvesa continued. We are both biological and mechanical. Our healers focus on biology. Our engineers focus on mechanics. Neither could save my hatchling. But you humans, you see connections others miss. The small dragon made a weak chirping sound. Its glow was fading. Please, Carvesa said, and the translator couldn't hide the desperation in her voice. He is the last of the royal clutch, the future of our lineage. Joe looked at the dying alien baby. He had no idea what he was seeing or how it worked. He fixed engines, not alien dragons. This was crazy. Impossible. But something about the mother's eyes, so alien yet filled with such familiar emotion, made him nod. Bring him inside, Joe said quietly. I can't promise anything, but I'll try. Relief visibly washed over Carvesa's massive form. She followed Joe into the garage, ducking her long neck to fit through the door. Joe quickly cleared off his main workbench, pushing aside tools and parts. Put him here, he said, spreading clean shop towels on the surface. Carvesa gently placed her hatchling on the makeshift bed. Up close, Joe could see how the creature's body was unlike anything on Earth. Its scales were partially transparent, revealing a complex system underneath, part organic tissue, part crystalline structure, part what looked like advanced technology. Can you tell me how it's supposed to work? Joe asked, studying the small dragon. What's wrong with it? Carvesa touched something on her neck device. A holographic image appeared above the workbench, a detailed diagram of the hatchling's internal systems. The heart core regulates everything, she explained. It powers both biological and mechanical functions. Joe stared at the diagram, trying to make sense of alien anatomy. It was impossibly complex, yet somehow familiar. Systems connected to other systems, energy flowing in patterns. How long does he have? Joe asked. Hours, perhaps less, Carvesa said softly. Just then, the garage door opened. Abby stood there, sandwich bag in hand, staring wide-eyed at the massive alien dragon looming over Joe's workbench. Joe? She whispered. What's happening? Joe looked from Abby to Carvesa to the dying hatchling. His simple life had just become anything but simple. Abby, he said calmly, I need you to close that door. Put up the closed for emergency repairs sign, and then come help me. We've got the strangest repair job of our lives. As Abby slowly closed the door, still staring at their visitors, Joe turned back to the alien diagram. Somewhere in that complex maze of biology and technology was a problem he needed to solve before time ran out. Abby stood frozen by the door for a long moment, staring at the massive dragon-like creature. Then her training kicked in. She put up the closed sign, locked the door, and pulled all the blinds down. What do you need me to do? She asked Joe, her voice only slightly shaky. Coffee. Lots of it, Joe said. Then I need you to call Steve Porter, the metallurgist who works for the mining company. Abby asked, already moving toward the small coffee maker in the corner. That's him. Tell him we need that special alloy he was working on, the one that conducts both electricity and heat in a weird way. Tell him it's urgent. As Abby made the call, Joe studied the holographic diagram that Carvissa had projected. The alien technology was far beyond anything on Earth, but the principles weren't completely foreign. Systems connected to other systems. Energy flowed from one part to another. When one thing broke, it affected everything else. "You're Hatchling," Joe said, looking up at Carvessa. "What's his name again?" "Rilzith," the large dragon said softly. Her glowing eyes never left her child. "Rilzith," Joe repeated. "And he's like you? Part biological and part machine?" "We do not see it as separate parts," Carvessa explained. "To us, it is all one. Our ancestors joined with crystalline entities long ago. We evolved together, became something new. The technology you see is not added to us. It grows with us." Joe nodded, still studying the diagram. "And this hardcore thing, it powers everything?" "Yes. It converts energy from food to power both organic tissues and mechanical functions." Joe zoomed in on the diagram, focusing on the heart core. It looked like a complex crystal surrounded by tissue, with dozens of connections running too. "Other systems. I think I see the problem," Joe said slowly. "This connector here, it's degraded. See how the energy flow is irregular? It's like a bad spark plug in an engine. One small part fails, and the whole system starts to break down." Carvessa moved closer, her large head next to Joe's. "Our healers focused on the crystal itself. They tried to strengthen it with energy infusions. That's like pumping more gas into an engine with faulty wiring," Joe said. "You're just making the problem worse. We need to fix the connector." Abby returned from her phone call. "Steve's on his way. He's bringing the alloy and his tools." "Great," Joe said. "Now call Linda Carter, the jewelry maker?" Abby looked confused. She used to work on microelectronics before she retired. Best hands I've ever seen for small, detailed work. As Abby made the second call, Joe carefully examined the small dragon. Rilzith's breathing was getting weaker. The glow under his scales was fading. "We need to stabilize him until help arrives," Joe said. He went to his toolbox and pulled out a small battery, some wires, and a multimeter. "This is primitive compared to your technology, but it might help regulate the energy flow temporarily." With careful hands, Joe attached the wires to specific points on Rilzith's body, guided by the diagram. He used the multimeter to check the electrical resistance, adjusting the connections until he found the right balance. "This should slow the failure," he told Carvessa. "But it's just a Band-Aid." The alien mother watched every move Joe made. "In all our travels, no species has ever tried to help us without demanding payment first," she said. "Why are you helping us?" Joe shrugged, not looking up from his work. "Someone needs help, you help them. That's just how it is." An hour later, Steve Porter arrived with a metal case. He was a tall man with thick glasses and hands stained from years working with metals. "Holy Mother of ... Steve stopped when he saw Carvessa. The alien dragon nodded at him. Steve took a deep breath and turned to Joe. "When Abby said it was life or death, I didn't think she meant ... this." "I need that alloy you were working on," Joe said. "The one that conducts both electricity and something you called bioresonance." Steve opened his case, revealing several small pieces of shiny metal. "It's still experimental. I was developing it for medical implants." "Well, now you're developing it for an alien implant," Joe said. "Can you shape it to match this?" He pointed to the degraded connector in the diagram. Steve studied the hologram. "Maybe, with the right tools." He looked at the small dragon on the workbench. "Is that ... a baby dragon?" "Hatchling," Carvessa corrected. "The last of the royal clutch." Linda Carter arrived 20 minutes later. She was an older woman with silver hair and steady hands. She didn't even blink at the sight of Carvessa. "Abby said you needed microsoldering," she said to Joe. "I brought my equipment." Joe quickly explained the situation. Linda studied the scythe diagram and the small dragon with professional interest. "It's not so different from repairing watch movements," she said, "just with higher stakes." Together, the four humans gathered around the workbench. Joe explained his plan. They would create a new connector using Steve's alloy. Then Linda would install it using her micro-soldering skills. "We need to remove the damaged connector first," Joe said. "That's going to be the tricky part." Carvessa stepped forward. "I can help with that." She extended one claw. A small tool emerged from the tip. "This can safely disconnect the old component." Joe nodded. "Then let's get started." The surgery, if you could call it that, took hours. They worked through the night, taking turns with the most delicate tasks. Linda's hands proved invaluable for the micro-connections. Steve continuously adjusted the alloy composition, trying to match it to the alien material's dot. As dawn approached, they faced a new problem. "The new connector isn't integrating properly," Linda said, looking up from the microscope Joe used for precision engine work. "It's like the body is rejecting it." "The energy patterns are wrong," Carvessa explained. "The heart core can't synchronize with the new material." Joe thought hard, searching for a solution. In his years fixing engines, he'd learned that sometimes the simplest approach worked best. "We need something to help it adapt," he said finally. "Like a converter that changes one type of energy to another." "A buffer," Steve suggested. "Something that can handle both types of energy and help them match up." Carvessa's eyes widened. "In our traditions, we use gold treated with specific frequencies to help new components harmonize with the body." Linda touched the gold necklace she wore. "Would this work?" "It's been in my family for generations." Carvessa examined the necklace. "Yes, with modifications." As the sun rose over New Horizon, the small team worked on their most delicate task yet, creating a tiny gold buffer that would help the new connector integrate with Rilzeth's systems. "This is it," Joe said, as Linda prepared to install the final piece. "If this doesn't work, ... He didn't finish the sentence. Everyone knew what was at stake. The small dragon's glow had dimmed to almost nothing. His breathing was barely noticeable. Linda took a deep breath and began the final installation. Her hands moved with perfect precision, placing the gold buffer and connecting it to the new alloy connector. "It's in," she said finally, stepping back. Everyone watched the small dragon, waiting for a sign. Seconds passed. In minutes, nothing happened. The room fell silent. Joe, Abby, Steve, and Linda stared at the small dragon on the workbench. Nothing was happening. No change in the faint glow beneath its scales. No improvement in its shallow breathing. Carvessa made a low sound it needed. No translation. It was the sound of a mother about to lose her child. "Wait," Joe said, leaning closer. "Look at the monitoring tablet. The energy levels are ... stabilizing." The alien tablet Carvessa had provided showed small changes in Rilzeth's vital signs. The numbers were still dangerously low, but they had stopped falling. "The new connector is working," Joe said, "but the system needs time to adjust and rebuild. Like an engine needs time to warm up after replacing a major part," Steve added, his eyes fixed on the readings. Carvessa moved closer, hope visible in her ancient eyes. "You believe he will recover?" Joe ran a hand through his hair, now messy after. "Hours of work. The connector is doing its job. The energy is flowing correctly. But we don't know if we did it in time. His systems were very weak. What can we do now?" Abby asked. "We wait," Linda said simply, "and we hope." The next 12 hours were the longest of Joe's life. They took turns watching over the small dragon, monitoring the tablet for any changes. Joe sent Steve and Linda home to rest, promising to call if anything changed. Abby refused to leave, making more coffee and sandwiches for everyone. Carvessa remained curled around the workbench, her large body forming a protective circle around her hatchling. She told them stories of her world, a planet far from Earth, with crystal forests and oceans that glowed at night. She explained how her people had evolved alongside technology, developing a unique biology that merged organic and mechanical parts. Our healers focus only on the biological, she said. Our engineers work only on the mechanical. Over generations, we lost the understanding that everything is connected. Humans make the same mistake, Joe said. We separate things that should be treated as one. As night fell again, Rilzith's condition remained unchanged. A small dragon was stable, but showed no signs of waking up. Joe fought against disappointment. They had done everything they could. Sometimes, even with car engines, you fix the problem, but the damage was already too great. Joe must have fallen asleep at his desk, because the next thing he knew, Abby was shaking him awake. Joe, wake up. He blinked, disoriented. What? What's happening? The readings, Abby said, pointing to the tablet. They're changing. Joe jumped up and hurried to the workbench. The numbers on the tablet were indeed changing, rising steadily. The glow beneath Rilzith's scales was stronger now, pulsing with a steady rhythm. Call Steve and Linda, Joe told Abby. They should be here for this. Carvessa was already ahead. Her hatchlings sighed, making that musical purring sound again. The large dragon's eyes glowed brighter with hope. By the time Steve and Linda arrived, more changes were visible. The new connector was fully integrated, its gold buffer helping to regulate the energy flow throughout Rilzith's body. The crystal structures visible beneath his scales were becoming more vibrant. It's working, Steve whispered, watching the tablet's readings climb. The system is rebuilding itself. His body is using the new connector to restore proper energy. Flow, Linda added. It's beautiful to watch. And it was beautiful. The network of crystal veins beneath Rilzith's scales lit up one by one, like a city's lights coming back on after a blackout. The small dragon's chest rose and fell with stronger breaths. Then, as they all watched, Rilzith's eyes opened. They were like his mother's, multifaceted and glowing from within. Ancient knowledge in a young body. The small dragon chirped, a sound like crystal bells. His head turned, taking in the strange surroundings, and the four humans staring at him in wonder. He lives, Carvessa said, her voice vibrating with emotion. You have done what our greatest minds could not. Rilzith chirped again, then slowly sat up. His movements were careful, but growing stronger by the minute. He looked directly at Joe, his gem-like eyes studying the human with clear intelligence. Then, the small dragon did something unexpected. He extended one tiny clawed hand toward Joe. Joe hesitated, then reached out his own hand. When their fingers touched, a spark of energy passed between them. Joe gasped as strange images filled his mind. Stars he'd never seen, worlds beyond imagination, and feelings of deep gratitude. What was that? Joe asked, pulling his hand back in surprise. The sharing of bond memory, Carvessa explained. It is our highest honor, reserved for those who save a royal life. Rilzith has recognized you as clan friend. What does that mean? Linda asked. It means, Carvessa said, that Joe Mason is now known to all Zealthraxians across the stars. Any of my people would give their lives to protect him, as he protected the royal hatchling. Joe felt his face grow warm with embarrassment. I just did what needed doing. Anyone would have tried to help. No, Carvessa said firmly. Many would have feared us. Others would have seen only opportunity for gain. You saw a life that needed saving. Rilsith chirped in agreement, then turned his attention to exploring the workbench. He picked up small tools with curious claws, examining them before setting them down. His movements grew stronger by the minute as his systems continued to heal. How did humans learn to fix things so well? Carvessa asked, watching her hatchling. With joy. Your technology is primitive compared to many species, yet you solved a problem our greatest minds could not. Joe thought about it. Maybe because we had to. Humans don't have special powers or built-in technology. We have to figure things out, improvise, see connections between different problems. And work together, Abby added. None of us could have done this alone. Rilsith chirped loudly, drawing their attention. The small dragon had found a box of bolts and was sorting them by size with impressive speed. He likes to organize things, Carvessa explained. A royal trait. He will make a fine leader one day. Thanks to you, Linda told Joe. Joe shook his head. Thanks to all of us. We did this together. Outside the garage, life in New Horizon continued as normal. No one knew that in Mason's auto repair, history had been made. Humans and aliens working together had saved a life and formed a bond that would change everything. As the sun rose on a new day, Joe watched Rilseth playing with spare parts, getting stronger by the hour. The universe suddenly seemed much bigger and much more interesting than it had 2 days ago. 3 days passed since Rilseth opened his eyes. The small garage had become an unusual home for the alien visitors. Joe had moved a cot into his office and slept there, giving up his apartment bedroom to Linda, who stayed to monitor the hatchling's recovery. Steve came by every morning with breakfast for everyone and new ideas for improving the connector. RIL_ZETH grew stronger each day. The small dragon now moved around the garage freely, exploring every corner with endless curiosity. He was about the size of a large dog, with scales that shifted colors depending on his mood. When excited, which was often, he glowed bright blue. When tired, his colors dimmed soft purple. He's learning so fast, Abby said, watching Rilsith organize a set of wrenches by size. The young dragon had a natural talent for mechanical things and seemed to understand how tools worked just by looking at them. Royal hatchlings carry ancestral memories, Carvessa explained. Knowledge passed down through generations, but they must awaken this knowledge through experience. Joe nodded, noticing how Rilsith watched him work on Mrs. Wilson's truck. The repairs had been delayed by the emergency alien surgery, but he needed to finish it today. Do all your people have mechanical parts like Rilsith? Joe asked Carvessa. Yes, but each is unique. Royal hatchlings have more complex systems because they must one day connect to the great crystalline networks that guide our civilization. As Joe worked on the truck engine, Rilsith climbed up beside him, chirping with interest. The hatchling watched Joe's hands, then picked up a small wrench and held it out. That's exactly the tool I need, Joe said, surprised. How did you know? Rilsith chirped again and tapped his chest where the heart core glowed beneath his scales. He says he feels the resonance between tools and problems, Carvessa translated. It is a royal gift. Working together, Joe and Rilsith finished the truck repairs in half the usual time. The small dragon seemed to know exactly what Joe needed before he reached for it, handing him tools and parts with growing confidence. We make a pretty good team, Joe told the hatchling, who chirped happily in response. That afternoon, Sheriff, Davis stopped by the garage. Joe had kept the blinds closed and the closed for emergency repairs sign up. But people in small towns noticed when a business stayed shut for days. Everything okay in there, Joe? The sheriff called through the door. Folks are getting worried. Joe opened the door just enough to stick his head out. "All good, Sheriff. Just working on a special project. Need a few more days." Sheriff Davis raised an eyebrow. "Must be some project. Mrs. Wilson says you've got her truck in there." "Yep, almost done with it." "Tell her it'll be ready tomorrow." The sheriff nodded slowly. "And those strange lights people saw the other night?" "Betty from the diner swears she saw something crash near your place." Joe forced a laugh. "Probably just some electrical work I was doing. You know how things get exaggerated." After the sheriff left, Joe turned to Carvessa with concern. "We can't keep you hidden forever. People in town are already asking questions." The large dragon nodded. "Our ship's cloaking system is still functional. I can activate it to cover your building while we complete repairs." "You're planning to repair your ship?" Linda asked. "With your help, yes," Carvessa said. "Rilzeth is recovering well. Soon we must return to our people." Joe felt a strange sadness at the thought of them leaving. In just a few days, he had grown attached to the dragons, especially Rilzeth. The garage would seem empty without them. That evening, they all walked out to examine the crashed ship. Under the cover of darkness, Carvessa activated a device that made the ship almost invisible. Only a slight shimmer in the air showed where it sat. "The damage is not severe," Carvessa said, examining the hull. "The main crystal drive is intact. We simply need to repair the navigation system and seal the hull breaches." "What do you need from us?" Steve asked. "Your special alloy would be perfect for the hull repairs," Carvessa said. "And Joe's understanding of systems would help with the navigation." They worked through the night on the ship. Joe was amazed by the alien technology. It was far beyond anything on Earth, yet the basic principles made sense to him. Everything connected in logical ways. The ship wasn't just a machine. It was almost alive, responding to Carvessa's touch and voice. Rilzeth stayed close to Joe, watching everything he did and chirping suggestions that Carvessa translated. The hatchling seemed especially interested in how Joe approached problems, thinking through each step before acting. "He admires your method," Carvessa explained. "Our engineers follow strict patterns. You try new ways when old ones fail." By morning, the ship's main systems were functional again. The hull was sealed with Steve's alloy, which bonded perfectly with the alien materials. The navigation system responded to Carvessa's commands, its crystal display glowing with star. Maps Joe couldn't begin to understand. "We can leave tomorrow," Carvessa announced. "The ship needs one cycle to fully integrate the repairs." Joe nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. "I'll miss you both," he admitted. "Especially my little helper." He reached out to pat Rilzeth's head. The hatchling chirped and pressed against his hand. "Before we leave," Carvessa said, "we wish to thank you properly." She moved to the ship and retrieved a small crystal box. Inside was a device unlike anything Joe had seen. A small disc made of the same shifting material as the ship's hull. "This is a communication node," Carvessa explained. "With it, you can contact us across the stars. Rilzeth wishes to continue learning from you." "From me?" Joe was shocked. "But your civilization is thousands of years ahead of ours." Carvessa's eyes glowed with warmth. "In technology, yes. But you have something we have lost, the ability to see connections between different systems, to improvise, to try new approaches. These are skills the next leader of our people will need." Joe looked at Rilzeth, who was watching him with those intelligent gem-like eyes. The small dragon chirped and tapped his chest again, where the heart core with its human-made connector continued to pulse with healthy light. "You saved more than a hatchling," Carvessa said softly. "You may have saved our entire civilization by showing us a new way to solve problems." That night, as Joe lay on his cot in the office, He thought about how much his life had changed in just a few days. Tomorrow, his alien friends would leave. But they weren't really leaving, just going home. And somehow, against all odds, a small town. Mechanic from Wyoming had become the teacher to a future alien leader. The morning of departure came too quickly. Joe, Abby, Steve, and Linda gathered at the garage before sunrise. They had agreed this was the safest time for Carvessa and Rilzeth to leave. When most of New Horizon was still asleep, the ship sat in the back lot, its cloaking device making it shimmer like heat waves on a summer road. Carvessa had loaded their few belongings, mostly samples of Earth materials she found interesting, and some tools Joe had given her. "Are you sure you won't be missed back home?" Joe asked, helping to secure a box of spare parts in the ship's storage area. "You've been gone for quite a while, searching for help. Time moves differently in deep space," Carvessa explained. "What has been days here will be only moments there. Our absence will barely be noticed." Rilzeth was having a harder time with the goodbye. The young dragon kept moving between the ship and Joe, chirping sadly and changing colors from bright blue to deep purple. He had grown attached to the humans, especially Joe. "He doesn't want to leave," Abby said, watching the hatchling's distress. "He must," Carvessa said gently. "He is royal. He has duties to our people. But we will return. This I promise." Joe knelt down to be at eye level with Rilzeth. "Hey, buddy. We're not saying goodbye forever. We have the communication device, remember? And your mom promised you'd visit again." Rilzeth chirped and pressed his head against Joe's chest. Joe felt that strange connection again, a flow of images and feelings. This time he saw a vast crystal city, a throne room, and Rilzeth, grown much larger, wearing something like a crown. "He's showing you his future," Carvessa explained. "And your place in it. You are now part of our history, Joe Mason." Linda wiped tears from her eyes. "Will other aliens come to Earth now? Are we ready for that?" Carvessa considered the question. "Not all at once, but perhaps in time when the world is ready for official contact. Until then, there may be unofficial visitors." "Like you," Steve said. "Yes, those who see potential in humans beyond your technology level." It was time. The sky was beginning to lighten with the first signs of dawn. Carvessa urged Rilzeth toward the ship, but the hatchling had one more thing to do. He scurried back to Joe's workbench and picked up something in his claws. It was a small crystal, similar to the ones in his heart core, but simpler. Rilzeth placed it in Joe's hand and closed the human's fingers around it. "A gift," Carvessa translated, "from his personal collection. It is very precious to him." Joe felt the crystal warm in his hand. "Thank you, Rilzeth. I'll keep it safe." Final goodbyes were said. Hugs were exchanged, even with Carvessa, whose large form gently enfolded each human. Then the dragons boarded their ship. The 4 humans stepped back as the ship's door closed. The cloaking device deactivated, revealing the full beauty of the alien vessel. It glowed with shifting colors, its crystal hull capturing the first rays of sunrise. With a sound like singing glass, the ship rose slowly from the ground. It hovered for a moment, then shot upward with incredible speed. In seconds, it was just a point of light in the dawn sky. Then it was gone. "Well," Steve said after a long silence, "that happened." Linda laughed, a sound of both joy and disbelief. "Yes, it certainly did. What do we do now?" Abby asked, still staring at the sky. Joe looked at the crystal in his hand, then at the communication device Carvessa had given him. "We go back to fixing cars. And we wait for a call from very far away." Life in New Horizon slowly returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after such an extraordinary experience. Joe reopened the garage. Mrs. Wilson got her truck back and was happy with the repairs. Sheriff Davis eventually stopped asking questions about the strange lights people had seen. But things were different too. Steve used what he had learned from the alien materials to develop new alloys. Linda started creating jewelry inspired by Zelthraxian designs. Abby began taking engineering classes online. And Joe? He kept the communication device in a special drawer in his desk. Every night before closing the garage, he would check it, waiting for a signal from the stars. 3 months passed. The memory of their alien visitors began to feel like a dream. Had it really happened? Then came the night when Joe was working late on a difficult engine problem. The garage was quiet, except for the radio playing softly in the background. The communication device activated with a musical chime. Joe nearly dropped his wrench as he rushed to open the drawer. The small disc was glowing, projecting a hologram above it. Rilzith appeared, now nearly twice the size he had been. The young dragon chirped happily when he saw Joe. "Hello, teacher," came Carvessa's voice, translating for her son. "I have been studying engines like you showed me. I have a problem to solve. Can you help?" Joe grinned, pulling up a chair to his desk. "Of course, buddy. Show me what you're working on." As Rilzith projected images of an alien engine system, Joe felt a warmth spread through his chest. Their friendship hadn't ended. It was just beginning. Over the next year, these late-night lessons became regular. Joe taught Rilzith about Earth engines and problem-solving. The young dragon taught Joe about alien technology and crystal systems. They both grew from the exchange. Sometimes Abby, Steve, or Linda would join the calls. They became a strange kind of family, connected across the vastness of space by a simple bond, the desire to fix what was broken and make things work better. Word spread quietly among certain alien species. Earth had something special to offer. Humans who could see problems differently, who could improvise solutions that more advanced civilizations would never consider. More visitors came, always in secret, always to Joe's garage first. Masons. Auto repair became something of a legend in the galactic community, a place where the impossible became possible, where a human mechanic had saved a royal hatchling with nothing but that basic tools and creative thinking. And it all started because an alien dragon brought her dying hatchling to a human mechanic, and what happened next shocked everyone across the stars.